Hello, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and today we are pleased to have with us Mark Morial, president of the National Urban League, the former mayor of the city of New Orleans, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I think I was telling you before we started that I got my notice, my regular newsletter from the Urban League today, and it said, "Is Black America in crisis?" Well, it turned out to be a fundraising letter, too.
Well,
you guys are so smart.
You have got to raise money when you run a civil rights organization because we're only as strong as our supporters are.
Right. Well, but the question is, Black America in crisis? Where do you put us
we
now?
are facing a crisis. We face headwinds because national public policy has shifted. There's a concerted effort to cut back on civil rights enforcement. There are plans underway when it comes to the budget that would really cause great damage to black and brown communities and all communities, I might add. The effort to roll back the gains of the Affordable Care Act, belovedly known as Obamacare, could potentially cost millions of people and millions of African Americans health insurance. The prospect, the risk of all these policies taking place does mean we face a new crisis. And it's a crisis coming after we've made some progress since the recession of 2008. Unemployment has come down.
Right.
We've seen increases in high school graduation rates, a number of things that point to the positive incrementally. These have not been giant leaps, but now I look out on the horizon and I see stiff headwinds.
Wow. We're going to talk about those headwinds and what the Urban League is proposing, you and the Urban League. But we always ask our guests to place themselves in Black America, and you have such a rich history. New Orleans, where your family owns the town. The convention center is named for your dad.
Yeah, I grew up in Pontchartrain Park, which is a part of the 9th Ward of New Orleans. It was a subdivision built for African Americans in the 1950s, and it was built by the city fathers to reinforce segregation. And the idea was we're going to create a nice neighborhood for African Americans. So in that neighborhood, you had, like my parents, my father was a lawyer, my mother was a teacher, but my father was also a Korean War veteran, served in Army intelligence during the Korean War. So you had veterans and others who settled in this neighborhood called Pontchartrain Park. So it was a neighborhood of African American homeowners. These were small 3-bedroom houses, but it was like living in a village. So part of my life was there. Another part of my life was in the neighborhood of my grandmother and grandfather. They lived in the old 7th Ward, the historic old 7th Ward, which was a neighborhood, very strong African American neighborhood of small businesses and churches and just great fabric. So I grew up understanding segregation because while we grew up in Pontchartrain Park, an all African American neighborhood, the schools integrated. So my sister and I went from kindergarten and 1st grade to integrated schools. So we would leave our neighborhood, and go across what was, quote, there was a ditch, a real ditch that separated the black neighborhood from the white neighborhood, and the white neighborhood was Gentilly Woods. And so we'd cross over and go to the school right there inside. So, you know, I grew up in civil rights. I grew up living civil rights.
Dad was mayor.
Huh? My father, when I was growing up, was a civil rights lawyer. He was president of the NAACP. Then he was a legislator. Then he was a judge before he became mayor. He actually became mayor when I was in college. So my life in remembering my parents, my mother is a teacher, teaching public school for almost 15 years. She taught in the Desire Public Housing Development. You know, my world covered a great span of New Orleans, both the black New Orleans and white New Orleans, because we went to integrated schools. And I had the opportunity when I was in 5th grade to integrate the middle school I attended. And then when I went on to high school, I was one of only a handful of African American students at that high school. So you saw and you felt
so it's in your
the
blood.
social change. And my parents were on the front lines, and it inspired me and it's influenced me.
It's quite a legacy, and I didn't know your dad, but your mom is sensational.
Yeah, my mom is a great woman and a powerful woman in her own right. Of course, she's written her own memoir. She was a school teacher, a university administrator, a civic activist in her younger days, a union activist. Just an incredible woman. And
So based on that, you went off to college in Georgetown Law and then became mayor of New Orleans yourself. That was such a political life. Then you stepped out of political life and decided to join the other side, so to speak, in this huge social activism forum, leading the National Urban League.
I always saw politics as an extension of civil rights and social activism. I was an elected official, quote, a politician in the legislature and as mayor, who really brought a social and economic justice and fairness agenda to the work that I did. But I had an incredible political career, but I had it as a very young man. I got elected to the legislature in my early 30s. I got elected mayor. I was 35, just turning 36. When I announced my campaign, I was 35. When I was sworn in, I was 36.
So
By the time I was
running the city of New Orleans at
yes.
36.
And so I'm 44 years old, and I'm term limited.
Right.
I've served as mayor. I've
Right.
been in the legislature. I've been president of the Conference of Mayors. What will the next chapter of my life do? And the National Urban League has been that next chapter in my life, and it's been a tremendous experience because it's a chance to continue to serve and continue to be committed on a national stage in a very interesting and challenging way.
Yeah, your analysis on television, I was telling you, and in print everywhere is really essential to the conversations that we're having. But I, of course, would love to see you run for president. That would be the next thing.
All things are possible.
All things are possible. He's not saying no,
All things are
which
possible.
I love. That's great. That's great. So now you just released the annual State of Black America report, which was very, very interesting and had a town hall where you discussed the full range of issues affecting Black America. I just want to take a listen to you there at the town hall, and then we'll come back and talk about it on the other side.
Thank you.
Okay.
No other report, Roland, speaks with facts and certainty to the status of Black Americans in comparison to the status of white Americans and the status of Latinos. No other report speaks with facts as to education, unemployment, health, civic engagement, and social justice. And we think it's important when we discuss the all-important issue of race, the all-important issue of the future of the country, that there be facts on the table. This report is not spin. It certainly isn't fake news. It's just the facts.
Just the facts, ma'am, and not alternate facts, alternative facts. It's the real facts. I love that you use the Equality Index, and we used this. We did a town hall here a few weeks ago, and we used it then because it's the first time I think that I've actually seen this sort of relationship where you've taken economics, health, education, social justice, and civic engagement and rated them to the general population, let's say, or from Black America. So in the general equality index, we're 72.2%. So we're lagging substantially.
We're lagging,
generally.
and people ask, what is this made up? So we use 300 pieces of data, and they're crunched into a formula. And the idea is, what's the comparison between the status of African Americans, whites, and Latinos in America? And the fact of the matter is that African Americans and the condition of African Americans are like a caboose on a train. When the train speeds up, the status of African Americans might in fact speed up, but the relative condition and relationship between the caboose and the engine does not necessarily change. What do I mean by that? Look at 1963, 1964. You'll see a African American poverty rate of some 50%. You'll see a white poverty rate in those days of almost 20 to 25%. Fast forward to now, you'll see an African American poverty rate of now 25%, cut in half, and a white poverty rate of maybe 10% or so. So it's been cut in half. But the black rate is still more than twice as high as the white rate. And that's really the story time and time again through all of these social and economic indicators. And so you talk about equality, you talk about disparities. The idea is we have to level the playing field in America. Public policy should recognize that that has to be an overriding goal.
So economics, let's take a look at that. That's a severe, we're at 56.7% equality.
So look at this, look at economics. On one hand, you've got income, the money you make, the wages that you earn, for example. And then there's wealth, the things you own. It could be a house, it could be a car, it could be a retirement account. So the disparities in income are significant, but the disparities in wealth are like a wide ocean. If the disparities in income are like a bay, the disparities in wealth are like a vast Pacific Ocean, with white wealth being more than 10 times greater than African American wealth on average. In income, it's much narrower. It might be a 2-to-1 relationship. You look at New York City, for example. The median black income is about $47,000. Median white income is about $87,000. So this is a persistent set of relationships. And I think elected officials, business leaders, civic leaders, when we talk about race in America, when we talk about disparities in America, when we talk about equality in America, I point to the necessity of everyone to be armed with the baseline of information and facts. And the State of Black America is available online to the general public, not only in the United States, but all over the world.
Yeah, and I would urge that you go there because it really explains a lot, you know, this wealth issue, that in fact the U.S. government created the middle class, the white middle class, by simply building houses and giving them mortgages.
It was Fannie Mae, it was the VA,
Right.
It was government-backed mortgages, it was the expansion of, if you will, opportunities for people to own homes. It was the push through unionization and professionalization and education, such as the GI Bill, that helped raise income levels across the board. So what people should understand in the United States, I get kind of irritated when people say, it's the government, no, it's the private sector. These two institutions, these two sectors of the American economy work hand in hand on very big issues. It was government-backed mortgages, but government-backed money being lent by private sector banks.
Exactly.
So these two sectors go hand in hand. And today, to tackle the largest and biggest problems we have, whether it's income inequality, whether it's the wealth gap, whether it's educational equity, it is required, it is necessitous that these two sectors work hand in hand or have some, if you will, harmony and relationship to work together.
So we have another clip from the town hall with the great Roland Martin. We should identify him. He was in the first clip too.
Yeah, and he actually moderated the town hall.
Yeah, great guy. And we have Angela Rye too, talking a little bit about this.
She's a real comer.
She is indeed.
Yes.
Let's take a look at this clip.
When African American businesses were going in to get loans, the only collateral they had was their home. No home, no loan, no business.
And this is one of those these issues that now, the more that I look at it, it really bothers me that we haven't learned from history. There's a speech, and I keep going back to this, and I've cited it in several speeches I've given this year since Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King delivered this speech in 1967, where do we go from here? In that speech, he tells us that we need to lean into our own institutions. Those institutions are black banks. Those institutions are black businesses, our community organizations. Hunker down and support ourselves. Why? Because far too often, the large banks that benefited from the disastrous housing crisis, that did not look out for us, that were borderline criminal, that would not lend to us through this small business program. The 7A program is bolstered by those large banks. Is now bolstered by this Steve Mnuchin's friends. So that's the real issue. If our banks had our resources in them, if we were banking black, then they would not have been just slaughtered in the 2008 recession. If we were banking black, we would have access to capital because they lend to us when my bank, for example, did not lend to me, even though they said that all my numbers were good. We have to start looking at ourselves and saying, what are we doing that we could be doing differently? How do we support our own institutions? How do we support our own businesses? If you don't have a bank account at a black-owned bank, I encourage you to do that today.
Okay, we have a feeling that the banks will be lending to Angela Rye.
Yeah. Angela Rye's been a great commentator. I enjoy watching her. She's brought a certain fire, and she's a part of this next generation, a new generation
Exactly.
of spokespersons and commentators, and this new generation, they're as good as anyone.
Right, right, and they are less cautious, which I like. You know,
They
they're
bring
more-
it.
That's right. They are fabulous. You issued a statement recently about the budget and how it's going to affect, and we've talked a little bit about this. But what you're saying that if the proposal falls severely short of his promise, President Trump's promise to make America great again, the federal budget is a reflection of a president's priorities based on this proposal. Millions of Americans still struggling to recover from the last economic recession will continue to be left behind. And this is you've got a plan, though. I mean, it's not just pointing out the facts and figures. You've got a Marshall Plan.
The budget of the country, the budget of the United States government is a blueprint, it's a strategic plan, it's a statement of priorities, it's a statement of values. Since the president's 2018 budget was released, the reaction across the board has not been positive to the budget. I feel that the Congress is going to work to rewrite that budget and reduce or eliminate many of those cuts. But here's the concern. Some of the cuts are so deep and dramatic. We don't win if zeroing out a program turns into a 50% cut. Those investments in seniors, in housing, in community development, in Pell Grants, in K through 12 education are essential if the issues that we raise in the State of Black America report are going to be addressed. Now, they don't go far enough. The Pell Grant program does not go far enough. So to cut it is to add cruelty to an already difficult situation. The housing and community development programs at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they don't go far enough. We've got a deep housing crisis across the nation because we've not been producing, since the recession, a sufficient number of new housing units to even keep up with the growth in the population.
Not to mention affordable housing.
Not to mention affordable housing. And therefore, to cut the tools that cities use, that community development organizations use, that the private sector uses to build more housing adds cruelty to an already difficult situation. So the Urban League is going to be leading the effort with many. And I think you're going to see mayors, I think you're going to see many governors, community leaders, and civil rights leaders stepping up and saying, we need a fair budget, we need a budget that matches growth with compassion, and we need a budget that doesn't sacrifice investments in people for investments in the military.
Well, what President Trump and his administration seem to be saying is that whatever they cut back will be supplied by local governments, by states, by cities, by whatever. Can we rely on that?
That's really hocus pocus dominocus. It's just something
I like that. Hocus
it-
pocus, what?
Dominocus.
Dominocus.
It's something that must exist in the figment of someone's imagination. If you talk to the mayor of any city, if you talk to the governors, if you talk to the faith-based organizations and the charities around America, they're already stretched. Cities are doing everything they can. Many states are doing the best they can with limited resources. The federal government should and must be a partner because it is to the federal government where we've imbued the power of great taxation, the ability to raise money not only from income, but also from goods and products that come in and out of the United States. So we have to understand, and that when we hear people raise this excuse that some of these things we can't afford, I always ask them, how'd you find the money to invade Iraq?
Right.
Where'd you
Sure.
get the money to do many of these other things? It's an issue of what our priorities are, and I say our priorities should be our children, they should be our people, they should be building an America for the future.
You also commented on the Paris Accords.
So I think let's
Talk a
so
little
let's
bit
talk
about that
Paris.
and
So I
how
think
that affects Black America.
I think importantly for Black America is this. Let's just look at public health. So the public health component, there's a high incidence of asthma in our community. This is a bit personal to me. My father died of an asthma attack. And that high incidence of asthma is exacerbated by air quality issues. And air quality issues go hand in hand with global warming and the issue of climate change. So the United States shouldn't, and Black America has to understand, to walk away from Paris and to walk away from the commitments to reduce CO2 emissions over a period of time simply means that this asthma that we have high incidences of in many urban communities isn't a priority for those who say Paris isn't important. Secondly, one of the fastest growing sectors of the economy are renewables, alternatives, renewable and alternative energies, and the equipment and the products and those things that seek to reduce, if you will, climate change and global warming. That's a growing sector of the economy. Those are jobs. I am concerned that walking away from Paris says to China and other countries, you can control the future of that economy. You can control wind and solar and the equipment we need to make the adjustment in the United States of America. So for Black Americans, I always say, what issues are important to Black Americans? All issues.
All
Because
issues.
we are Americans.
Sure.
And
Well, the way
like,
the environment is often translated as ice flows somewhere in a distant part of the world, as opposed to children in Detroit or Flint or Chicago.
and the effect that air quality, the deterioration of air quality, which is accentuated by increase in CO2 emissions, can have. The second thing is living and leading a coastal city, New Orleans, and the National Urban League having been involved in hurricane response after Katrina and to some extent with Sandy.
On the front line.
People
That's-
have to understand
Sure.
that our weather patterns are adjusted, and the prospect of flooding, particularly along the coast, it's exacerbated by global warming and climate change. So this is an issue
Sure.
that everyone should be concerned about. And I think in the Black community and in urban communities, we've got to do more to educate people why.
And
Global
you're doing that
warming-
with your Saving Cities conference,
Yes,
right?
Save Our Cities
Yeah.
is the broad concept, education, jobs, and justice. So global warming is a jobs issue, and it's also a justice issue.
And talk a little bit more about this conference, because you are bringing this local aspect of saving our people. And
Well,
our
we're
cities.
looking forward to the Urban League's annual conference. It will take place. It's the meeting of the Urban League movement. We'll have tens of thousands of people there the last week of July in St. Louis, Missouri. So we're partnering with the Greater Metropolitan St. Louis Urban League, one of the Urban League's very best affiliates, to bring a conference together, which is a thought leaders conference, which is an issues-based conference, which brings people from teenagers at our youth summit to young professionals at our young professional summit to small business owners at Small Business Day into St. Louis, along with people in the city of St. Louis, to discuss how do we save American cities. So we'll be talking education, we'll be talking about jobs and entrepreneurship, we're talking about criminal justice, we've got a jobs fair.
Great.
We've also got a tech summit. It's
So
going to
we're
be exciting.
looking forward to the results of that and the happening of that. I'm sure you'll be live streaming some of it.
We'll be live streaming, and those that are interested, go to nul.org
Right.
And
He's a good executive, good president of an organization here. We always finish by asking our guests to complete the sentence. The strength, the power of Black America lies in
our passion, our perseverance, and our people.
And you think that, where are we on the continuum of employing that strength, that power?
What I am enthused by is the passion and the activism of the emerging generation. The next generation, the new generation, they've come of age in response to many of the police community issues that have occurred across the nation. And I feel they have a strong activist spirit. I want to see that activist spirit continue. I want to see that activist spirit also translate into greater participation in civic processes, in democracy, and in voting. They are going to be a part of how we protect our progress. They're going to be a part and the leaders of this resistance
Where do you
effort
think
that
they?
we
Where do
need.
you think they got that, though?
I think that the death of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown were catalyzing incidents. And I think many times, like the death of Emmett Till, like the Montgomery bus boycott, like Brown v. Board, the Supreme Court case in Brown v. Board, sometimes these incidents catalyze action. The Supreme Court, striking down important parts of the Voting Rights Act, sent a message to everyone that even 50 years after the Civil Rights Movement, we have to remain vigilant because there are forces still trying to undo that change. And I think that you see this activism, whether it's the Women's March, which took place early this year, whether some of the actions you see taking place in response to some of the terrorist incidents. There's an activism. It's on Twitter, it's in social media, but it's also in the community, it's also in the streets.
Well, thank you so much, Mark Morial, for your terrific perceptions.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh,
Appreciate you.
Great. Thank you for all of the work you're doing. And thanks to you out there for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and we will see you the next time.